Southwest Fire Academy was established in 2015 as a response to the recognized need for quality, safe, and affordable fire and rescue training in Ontario. This is not your average fire college. SFA has high standards for their students, and it is their mission to teach and produce qualified, ambitious firefighters who are prepared to work hard to serve their communities. This is not a diploma mill. This is where you can learn strategic, aggressive firefighting from passionate, intelligent instructors who never forget why they were made to do this job. SFA is an accredited private career college that is regulated by the Ministry of Training, colleges, and universities, with a memorandum of understanding with the Office of the Fire Marshal. This means that SFA is an approved training provider with the OFM, and the programs are recognized in Ontario. Check out their pre-service and expanding selection of course offerings at southwestfireacademy.ca. Hello everyone. Welcome to episode 107 of Multiple Calls. I'm Scott Hewlett. The most important questions you can ask yourself and others about training you watch or are involved in, on any topic, are: how does this translate? What are the limitations of this training prop, environment, equipment, and evolution? And what habits can I build from it that I can depend on? Put through these filters, even bad training will produce valuable perspective and learning. This is a trade, and not having a way of doing things is not a way of doing things. We don't just get in there and get it done. Learn the skills that make you more efficient and work more effectively, and see everything you think and do through the lens of how it affects trapped victims and their loved ones. Here's my chat with Andrew Pristach. Why don't you kick off and tell me about where you grew up?
So I grew up in the DC suburbs, Fairfax County, Virginia, west side of the county in Centerville. So pretty standard home life. Mom, dad, older sister, grandfather kind of lived in the area. My dad and my grandfather owned an elevator maintenance company. Growing up, my two biggest influences were probably my mom and my grandfather. So my mom's just a very intellectually curious person. She had been to college for, I think it was linguistics and Russian lit. I distinctly remember growing up driving around, and she'd ask me like, well, what do you think about whatever thing was on the radio or whatever? And then, well, why do you think that? And what do you think other people think about that? And just always kind of examining the world around me and questioning assumptions, which I think she immediately regretted when I got into school, because I questioned just about everything I heard, and it didn't do well with arbitrary authority. She always kind of fostered a love of reading in me. So, and it got weird. Like, I think I was probably 8 years old. She's handing me like Solzhenitsyn to read. And, Gulag Archipelago is a great book, but at 8 years old, it's an odd choice, but I'm probably better for it. My grandfather grew up in the south side of Chicago in the Depression, like down the street from Al Capone and his associates, like literally making bathtub gin, and had like a sixth grade education, but had joined the Navy, and just a very like self-taught engineer. So he was a boatswain's mate. He goes through World War II. He commanded a gun turret on the Louisville at one point for the Battle of Leyte Gulf. And then after World War II is over, he's looking at how they replenish ships at sea, which is a huge technical problem. Like, you've got ships are not only moving up and down on swells, but also forward and back and side to side all at the same time, and not necessarily in relation to each other. And you've got to get ship from one side to the other, right? So he ends up taking like his annual leave for the year and goes to I want to say it was the Naval Academy's library, reads literally everything on replenishment underway at sea in like the space of like 2 weeks, and designs a system that they still use today. It's the NATO standard, and it's elevator weights and counter weights and pulleys. So it keeps the lines all tensioned all at the same time. I remember distinctly, like, over and over growing up, having this drawn out on napkins at restaurants. Like, he was a pretty brilliant engineer. He was an asshole as a person, but like kind of that you could be self-taught and successful My dad started a series of companies for elevator work, and that was kind of the family business. So I had a view of kind of blue collar skilled labor from the management side growing up.
What was school then for you? If you were saying you had a trouble with arbitrary authority and questioning things and maybe being having a few more perspectives than the average kid. So how'd that go for you?
Not well. I think I was probably okay until about sixth grade. I did really, really well in history and English and science. I probably have a learning disability in math that was just never pointed out. It was just kind of like, oh, well, you're not applying yourself. And like, no, this doesn't make any sense to me. So as soon as that came up and I kind of realized that it didn't matter if I tried or not, I was going to get the same result. Why try? And I was bored anyways. It was kind of weird going home and I'd educate myself on the same topics. Growing older, I look at it kind of it's odd to segregate everybody by age and throw them into kind of a minimum security prison. Foucault was probably right about that. So I didn't do horribly well in school. There are subjects that I wish I had learned a little bit better, but especially now as I get into some of the stuff we're doing with physics, I wish somebody had pointed out like, oh, no, you are going to learn math differently. Here's a way that you could probably figure out, at least string you along, but that never happened. I ended up dropping out of high school at 16. So I think Fields said he and school mutually separated. I don't think it was so mutual on my part, but yeah, I left, never really looked back. I ended up in community college for a little while, which actually ended up getting me into the fire service because I needed some extra credits and took my EMT. But for the most part, I've always learned better teaching myself than having somebody else try to teach me. Never quite understood why. It's just how it's always been.
What about sports and hobbies?
My dad played semi-professional basketball in Australia at one point. He was really good at it. I think it broke his heart that a white boy can't jump. And I could not play basketball. So we settled on baseball. He'd played that as a kid. And the way my birthday sits on the breakover for how they set up the league, I was always the youngest. I didn't play with anybody who was in my school. Everybody else went to school together, and I was the one odd man out. I was always a little bit socially isolated, and I was always the youngest, usually the smallest. I'm not naturally all that coordinated, but my dad was very adamant that like, if you're going to do this, you're going to be good at it. I remember like growing up, I was probably in elementary and middle school, going to like former minor and major league hitting coaches and pitching coaches. And it's just funny now going back, like I knew when I got into academy what real coaching and training was. And I was very confused or maybe disappointed at, oh, just do whatever works for you. It's like, no, there's got to be a technique that makes moving hose easier that's not on all fours, torso down. This doesn't seem like this makes any sense. But yeah, I remember having like motion capture of a swing from like 3 different axes and trained at a high level, never played at a high level. I was decently good. I'd just gotten into high school. I broke my arm and never was able to throw again. So that kind of ended baseball for me. But like I did get the experience of knowing what it was like to be coached, like that the little minor details of how you did it made huge differences. And also what practice was. That practice was not a couple times we do this and then we go back and we eat lunch. Practice is, oh, you're doing this thousands and thousands and thousands of times. And then we're going to correct for the problems that you've introduced through your practicing. I got out of baseball and like any good little shithead, I got into skateboarding. I think I benefited from a different side that there was no way to learn other than watching other people, usually in very limited numbers of opportunities to watch them. You didn't really have the vocabulary to teach somebody what you were doing. You could just show them, but not very well. So it was a lot of being able to pick up on the little things really quickly. And also, it's a single man sport. You practice that on your own over and over and over. And I think I benefited a lot between that. And I played drums and guitar in a couple of bands. I benefited from really loving things that I really suck at. That taught me so much through life, that like how to continue when no, you're really bad at this, but you love it so much. You'll keep on going. You'll keep grinding. and, just spending hours on your own learning how to do a skill over and over and over to make it sound somewhat natural when you're really awful, I think was one of the bigger life lessons I've ever learned. I did competitive shooting for a while. I did shotgun, so trap and skeet. And then I also did a mid-range competitive service rifle. So M1 Garands, AR-15s, M1As out to 1,000 yards on iron sights. So that was all about precision. Like that was technique and precision. So like a thousandth of an inch of barrel movement at 1,000 yards is a out of the X and into the 9. There is a technique to that, and it is learned and it is drilled into you. And like if you deviate from the technique, it does not work. And I think all of that in one way or another prepped me for the job later on in a lot of ways, each in its own way, I think.
You mentioned a couple family mentors, but tell me about some mentors outside of family and maybe in the fire service.
So fire service wise, my first crew had a couple guys on there. Some of them I'm still in contact with that really not necessarily showed me how to do the job, but showed me how to be on the job. I very much appreciate their contributions. But while I was in academy the first time, I remember moving hose really stood out to me as far as something I didn't understand. Nozzle work was a disaster, but forcible entry stood out to me because everybody loves the day they bring the door out and you force it. But they're showing me like, okay, well, use the adz this time, inward swing a door. Okay, now use the forks. I'm like, well, when do we do the adz and when do we do the forks? Well, sometimes you do the adz and sometimes you do the forks. I'm like, okay, I got that. I understand that part. But when do we do each? And well, sometimes we use the adz and sometimes we use the forks. Like, this isn't helpful. So I get out in the field. First door I force on a residential is a disaster. I blow the frame out. First door I force on a commercial, I end up getting the bar stuck so bad that I have to get another bar to pry the first bar out. And I am just pissed at myself. Like, I'm disgusted that, well, you should be better at this. Like, you went through a pretty decent volunteer academy. You went through an okay career academy. Like, you should know how to do this. And nope, I have no idea. Like, I can get a door open, but that's not the point, right? I took an outside class in the area. I think it was like Martinsburg, West Virginia's training weekend. And these guys are doing forcible entry. And it's like, okay, well, they know what they're doing, but they're not articulating it. They can tell me what to do, but not why or how or when, not to the detail that I would like and not in a way that I understand. So I go through, I don't know, it's probably at least a year or two being really pissed at myself. And I ended up stumbling on a YouTube video for Through the Lock. And it's Sean Wilson from Royal Oak, Michigan. Ran, at the time, it was Search and Destroy fire training. Now he's runs Rise Above. I remember thinking, that guy is explaining this in a way that I understand it. And I had never had that in the fire service. Everything seemed just really loose as far as, well, just do whatever you want because none of us really understand what we're doing, it seemed like. I know that's not the case, but that was a perception. And so I reached out to him, and he ended up fielding questions from me for years because he was really into making your tools work for you, building your own props. He and I had a similar background in music taste. So there was a band from, I think it was Southern California in the 80s, the Minutemen, old punk band. They used to do jamming Econo. It was like whenever they could pick up, like somebody could record for 5 minutes, they'd lay down a track, that kind of thing. And so Sean's thing was always, we're jamming Econo. We'll pick up trash off the side of the road. We'll make a prop out of it. It's incredible how those two worlds overlap. I was a roadie for a band for a little while, very short while, but like the kind of get in the van, we're going to go play a show kind of mentality works really, really well along with especially at that time, the like early truck floor training, early days of like Facebook forums for firefighting, when truck floor was like 300 people, not 30,000 or whatever it is now. And so we were always trading ideas on like what kind of trash we could turn, firehouse kind of flotsam we could turn into props. He eventually gave me my first slot teaching, invited me up to Kalamazoo. He was teaching for Southwest Michigan Fools, and he was like, you know what you're doing here. You know exactly what I'm going to say. Just come up and help me out. So For a while there, I was driving up. It'd be like 13, 14-hour drive one way to go teach 8 hours of class and then turn around. But I never would be where I am without Sean really just answering me like constant emails, answering questions. I'm sure I annoyed the shit out of him, but a few years later, Sam Hiddle from Wichita, probably the smartest man I've ever met. He and I had met at a couple classes. He's an odd one. If you don't necessarily have something he's interested in, he's not going to talk to you very long. I was teaching at the Journeyman Fire Conference in Virginia. Kyle Sampson used to organize, and he was teaching TIC stuff. I was teaching forcible entry stuff, and he stopped by our training site and saw we make our door props out of polymer for the door panels because real doors flex. They're not solid big pieces of welded tube steel. He was like, "Who made this?" Like, "That's me." He's like, "We need to talk." I was like, "Okay." Years later, we still collaborate on props. We send each other stuff back and forth. Provide his props for he took over the traditions training urban truck at FDIC, so helping him out this year with props and the running the doors. So definitely those two. Aaron Fields, he I think I'm on number 6 taking nozzle forward, and it's not enough. He lives like 10 minutes south of my parents, so I try to go get a cup of coffee with him every time I'm out there. So when we got Dixie Firemanship off the ground back in 2016, I think, he was really, really helpful in kind of guiding us through writing a program, because that was something we've never done. Also, I think you probably have to mention negative mentors too, because they're oftentimes you learn more from them than the good ones, right? I had a battalion chief once that, oh God, he was an asshole. The first place I worked, we used to have this performance incentive, a couple $100, and everybody got a 3 out of 5 because you couldn't rate some people more than others. It was like this, it was just kind of guaranteed. You made a couple $100 a year on this performance incentive thing. And we had shift training one month. They were doing reviews of famous line of duty deaths. So they do the Hackensack Ford fire, and we're out having a smoke break out next to the training room. And he's talking about how dangerous bowstring trusses are and how we have a bunch of them in the area. And I'm like, but that wasn't a real bowstring truss, because a real bowstring truss has a turnbuckle. And you would think somebody would have taken a picture of the turnbuckle if that killed so many firefighters. But instead, all we have are these pictures of burned out arch trusses, like heavy timber. And also, how do you have an attic space with a floor that stores car parts on a bowstring truss? And I wasn't being an asshole about it, but he took away my performance incentive that year. It's like a couple $100, but it's like, come on, man. I wasn't trying to be a dick about this, but after that, he took away my ability to carry my own tools because he said I was a tinkerer. A good firefighter sits down, shuts up, does what he's told. A trained monkey could do the job. I have a feeling he's largely forgotten after his retirement. I've done some pretty cool shit with the fire service. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I've gotten to do some really cool stuff, and there are people walking around because that wouldn't have been because of stuff I've done, and there's tools on the market, and I still get the occasional email saying like, "Hey, we made a grab because something y'all taught." Like, I've been able to make a good impact, and I'm pretty sure he's probably, no one says his name anymore. So I'm happy to have proved him wrong that the fire service doesn't need tinkerers. I carry that memory fondly of him docking my performance incentive.
Yeah, I love it. What was the first exposure to the fire service?
I think I was probably 3 years old. Some guy from, I'm assuming it was probably a volley from Fairfax City, came out to my preschool and with the truck and everything. And this is, I guarantee, my 3-year-old's perception of the situation. He scared the shit out of me. Something about like, well, your house is going to burn and like everything that you have or love is going to burn. It was like, I guarantee I heard it wrong, but at the same time, I'm sure it was like the most tactless. No one likes doing the preschool fire safety day, right? That's the first one I remember. There's a family friend that was a volley in the area growing up, and it was like, okay, that's kind of cool. I didn't think about it at all till I was in community college, and I think I was like studying psychology or some shit. I needed some extra credits. So my mom said, you should probably go get your EMT. You enjoy reading about medical stuff, and you go out and do stuff where it'd probably be good if you could stop a major bleed. I think she was worried I was going to go out and like sever an artery in the woods or something. So I took that and it was like, oh, this is kind of fun. It's kind of interesting. Where do I get to use this? A family friend, I think, that was a volunteer medic in Loudoun County, and she was like, well, you have a volley house not too far. Go apply. I did, and they were like, well, we don't have any space on the ambulance, but we have space on an engine right now. I was like, okay, well, I'll do that while I'm waiting. And I got on there. They did duty crews, so I think it was Wednesday and Thursday night, I was there. I was like, holy shit, this is way better than EMS. Not that long after that, I ended up kind of shotgunning the whole region with applications and got on the far western side of the DC suburbs. I can't imagine doing anything else now. Kind of gets in your blood, doesn't it?
Which came first, the instructing or the prop building?
Prop building. I had been building like little through the lock props or like kids' heads stuck in the banister prop or whatever I could do. I've always just kind of been just dicking around with stuff in the garage. We didn't have a door prop. We had to drive like 30 minutes, take the engine out of service to go force doors. It was something that I was still feeling kind of a little apprehensive about my own skill set with. So I wanted more practice time, but the department I was with didn't have one, and they weren't interested in buying one. So Sean Wilson had the plans for the old green door, and so I paid out of pocket, and I found a guy who was a career guy at my volley house that was a welder by trade. I was like, I'll pay you to build this with me, but you got to teach me how to do it. So over the course of a couple days and a few cases of beer, we built a halfway serviceable prop. And the inward swinging was fine, but the outward swinging was like a bank fault. So I emailed Sean and asked him, like, well, how do you fix this? And he goes, well, you figure it out and you let me know, because everybody has the same complaint about this. There's no springs in the door. There's no like flexion. And I think he sent me some guys from Alaska had used snowmobile springs to make a spring hinge door. I was really mad that I had spent all this time building something and I wasn't happy with the result. So I eventually stumbled into putting wood on the edge of the door because I didn't feel technically I had the ability to do springs. And that was actually a really good thing because springs in the hinges suck. Opening up your entire reveal all at the same time, top to bottom. Real doors don't do that. And I was going to make this really elaborate system. And then I was sitting at Andy Frederick's training days one year, and I was texting back and forth. I was doodling on a piece of graph paper while I was listening to, I think it was Bill Carey. My friend Michael knew what I was working on. Michael Taylor, he works for Corinth, Mississippi. He and I started Dixie Firemanship together. Was texting me. He was like, hey, I know what you're working on. I want it on my door. Can you make it so that it's like a module that I just add? And that ended up being really, really helpful because it allowed, my original design didn't have any flex to the door. It just had a deformable door edge, and having flex to it. I don't know why other people haven't figured this out yet. Everybody goes really, really heavy and I did the same thing. My first door weighed 800 pounds. I remember Sean told me 3/16 steel at max, 1/8 inch will probably be enough. And what do we all do? 1/4 inch steel. This thing's going to last for 1,000 years. I'm going to be really throwing down on this door. It's got to last, right? So I built the whole thing out of 1/4 inch, and it has no give to it. And then eventually starts breaking because it has no give to it. If you want it to last longer, you make it lighter. Let it have some flex to it, and it actually replicates a real door better too. That's what got me kind of really into prop building, and I didn't want to do it as a job. It was actually Gary Lane convinced me he was like, you have something here. You need to sell it. And I'm like, I don't want to sell it. I'll release it like out on, what do they call that? Free use, whatever that, Creative Commons. I'll patent it, but I'll release it for anybody who wants to use it. They just can't sell it. Pretty much just register as prior art. And he was like, no. It won't get spread out that way. Like people will do it, but not that many. You need to sell it so departments buy it. I curse Gary's name every once in a while still because it takes up all my free time. But I've been building them ever since, and they've come a long way, improving them, and now building all the parts, CNC plasma and CNC routed, and do a fair bit of business every year.
What led you into instructing?
Sean bringing me up. I wasn't going to do it. I have kind of a fear of public speaking. I really don't enjoy it. I wasn't going to. Yeah, Sean convinced me to come up with him. And then when Michael Taylor and I met, I'm still pissed that he made me pay to teach a class because I came down to Mississippi to give him the parts to build a door and then kind of build a door in his garage. It was the second one I ever built. He was like, "We've got this class going on this weekend, Tennessee Fools coming down. How about you take it?" And that day they had somebody drop out. It's like, "How about you run the forcible entry station?" I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like I hate talking to people. So I paid $15 to help teach for the day. And he and I afterwards, the area that he's in, Northeast Mississippi, was at the time, and it's changed so much. It's incredible to see the change. And we've only been a small part of what's happened there. But it was like, it'd be nice if we could distribute some of the knowledge that's nationally being distributed, but it's kind of missing the Southeast. It's kind of funny, as we were talking about this, I'm trying to think, OJ Kaloje and I think Clay McGee and somebody else were also there talking about starting Magic City Truck Academy. So that's a fun little historical tidbit. But we weren't going to teach. We were just going to be a clearinghouse for information. We brought on a couple other guys off the top of my head. Jake Chappell from Harvest, Alabama. So he, at the time, ran Truckless Truckee. Adam Cordell, Craig Hicks. I'm trying to think who else. Dustin Sinclair from, he's now captain at Rutherford County, Tennessee. Pretty quickly brought on Josh Fredericks too, but we were just going to be a clearinghouse for information. Like, if you had a video, we'll post it, kind of a thing. Kind of how Engine Company Resurrection started out. Very quickly, we found out that is not an easy model to keep up, but also people were requesting classes. Started doing that, and that's when I think it really started taking off for me. Also, at the time, I was helping out occasionally with Rogue Fire, so Gary Lane's group, before he joined Brothers in Battle. Here and there, I think Portland 1 year and Harrisburg maybe 1 year. But yeah, that's how I got my start with teaching. It's kind of grown from there.
And Dixie Firemanship?
That was Michael Taylor and I, and then a couple of us now teach the State Academy in Mississippi. We're state adjuncts. We have a Bureau of Firemanship, which is kind of cool. It runs the Engine and Truck Academy. It's really cool stuff going on there. And now I teach classes through Tradesman, my door prop company as well. Although the forcible entry stuff is kind of separated off with that. And we do a lot of that with Soda City, Jonitis' group out of Columbia, South Carolina.
Did it naturally just evolve into tools then, once the props were in the making?
In the same way that I enjoyed dicking around in the garage with putting props together, especially then, 10 plus years ago, the boutique tool market was just starting, kind of, in some ways. The Pig, I think, had just come out. The Iron Fox was about to come out. Firemall wasn't out yet. There were a couple companies making single piece forged bars. You know, you had your Pro Bar. The Max Mod wasn't out, or Maxima series from FFG wasn't out yet. You know, there were only a couple single piece forged bars out there, and all of them had little things that were not wrong, but could be improved. And, you know, this is around the time that, like, Sean Wilson puts out the Anarchist Guide to Halligan Tuning, and like Truck Floor was really big. And so there were all guys welding Rexes on to where they cut the pick off their Pro Bar kind of things. I'm always just kind of interested in, like, how can I improve this? Doesn't take long to go from like tuned Pro Bar to like, I still have a bar we jokingly call the Max Mod, because we took a Max Mod and like filled in the toe, and then it was, well, the forks are not quite the shape I would like. And then it started with modding tools and then trying to make tools. Had a little 110 welder out in the garage, and I'm cutting apart Harbor Freight, splitting mauls and trying to make a bigger beard, a heavier, like 8 or 9 pound roof tool kind of a thing. A couple years later, the Axe Junkies forum on Facebook, I was on there. Somebody posted Council Tools stopped making this, thank God, but it was a 10.5, I think, pound, 8-pound axe that had this big top locking slot, and it was just horribly balanced, and it was on a pickaxe handle, and like it's a bad tool. Somebody posted a picture of it, and I was like, that thing sucks ass. Like it just does. The guy who posted it comes back and like, well, what's wrong with it? Like, you want to know? It's like, yeah, I want to know. So I send back like a couple pages of like, here are all the things wrong with this thing. And I had just taken a job in Tennessee, worked briefly there for a fire department in a mid-sized city. I was living at a volunteer house outside of Nashville at the time, and I had a door prop there. And I was like, I'll show you. I'll take video. Like, we'll go out in the bay. So I go out and show that, like, yeah, your top locking slot will get stuck in the door, and it is almost unrecoverable. You can't get this thing back out. Here's some slow-mo video of like the head coming in crooked because it's so poorly balanced, and this round ass handle will not allow you to grip tight enough to swing one-handed and still make solid contact. I put all this back out in the comments section, and the guy comes back and goes, "You think you can do better?" I was like, "I don't know. I've never designed an axe before, but I'm pretty sure I could do better than that piece of shit." And he sends me a PM. It turns out it's Craig Roost. He works for Council Tool. He was like, "No, what would be better? We're about to redesign our 6-pound axe." So we talked for a couple hours on the phone and draw up the basic requirements for what ends up being the FE6 axe. He and I did that together. And right before he got off the phone, I was like, "And your halligan bar sucks too." And he's like, "Well, one thing at a time." I was like, no, it needs some changes too. He goes, they made that and contract bars for Akron. They had that giant shepherd's crook adze that you can't force an outward swinging door with the adze because it will drive itself into the door. So yeah, a year or two later, we did the TD30 halligan bar. I had a small bit of input on the New York hook that came out last year. The FE8 8-pound axe, he and I did. We've got another one coming, another tool coming out at FDIC this year, hopefully. But yeah, it got me into, I don't work for them. I don't make any money off of them. I occasionally get free tools. Just, it's how I prefer it to be structured, so nobody can say it's a conflict of interest. But it's been really cool. It's a different experience than I thought it would be. Starting out with not what's wrong with this tool, because we can all critique tools, like what we like and what we don't like, to varying degrees depending on how deep your knowledge goes in it. You can look at it though and say like, oh, I like this feature, I don't like this feature, but start from scratch and tell me what would be best, not what would be better. That's a mindset change that's very difficult to get into. And then that ended up taking me some really weird places. Like last year I was in Milwaukee for the U.S. Society for Steel Foundries of America, I think was what it was. Them and the DoD sponsored a college metallurgy competition making halligan bars. And that was really cool seeing, like, because I was there with like the Forged in Fire cast, like Ben Abbott and Baker do, like, they're judging, like they do the History Channel show, and like these college kids made some pretty incredible bars in some cases, and like we're snapping pics off of them and stuff. And like Ty Rondeau from Milwaukee Fire and I were up there just having the time of our lives. So it's been cool to see where that's taken us. I never guessed I was going to be where I am now with that. It's just kind of a odd opportunity, and I took it, and I've really enjoyed where it's gone though, because who the hell else can say that they've gotten to design their own halligan bar? Like, I get asked every once in a while, like, well, what do you do to tune your bar? Like, sharpen the pick, because they don't like the pick going through the cardboard during shipping. Like, otherwise I don't have to do anything to these. I designed it to be what I wanted. That's been just really awesome to get to carry what I drew up. I found the drawings the other day in my filing cabinet at work, and that's what work's buying now, because they can get it, and it's a thin bar that fairly inexpensive, and it works really well. So it's pretty cool. It's a good feeling.
Tradesman Fire and Fabrication, makers of fine door proppery for the discerning fireman, does not advertise. That would be horrifically unpunk rock of them. However, Tradesman Fire and Fabrication does support good dudes doing good things, like the Multiple Calls podcast. Please support good dudes doing good things.
How great is it that the interaction went that way? It's got to be pretty rare that you meet another mind that's just as curious and wants to get to the right solution, as opposed to just jumping with ego.
And Craig is a tool guy through and through. He's done really good stuff for Council. I was up at their forge last October or November, hanging out with the family that owns it. The Council family still owns it. Getting to tour their forge and talk tools with guys that don't know it from our side, but really know the tool business. It's cool getting to compare knowledge.
We talked briefly before we got started about where things are going next for tools, which is pretty awesome. So why don't you run that down for me?
JJ from Soda City and I have been working together for a while now on some classes. We just got done with a class at Anderson, South Carolina. It's kind of been the culmination of a couple years now of an idea that, in a couple different ways, a couple different ideas all coming together at the same time, and it's I think going to yield some really big results for the fire service. So my business partner with the doors, Ryan, he was actually my senior man when I first started. So it's kind of cool that he's out of the fire service now, but he's been my best friend for a really long time. But he's a IT guy by day and built us a physics calculator. And then we cobbled together a bunch of accelerometers and load cells and LiDAR speed guns. And we've got it to basically be a flow meter for hand tools, real time. What force are you putting out? So change your hand position. How much does that change your force? Change your tool. We're slowly building a library within, it's a phone app now that has every tool in our cache, which is most of what's on the market. We've spent years buying or collecting, borrowing, stealing, sometimes stealing every tool on the market. Everything's in that app now, all the dimensions of it, the weights. It was really cool. So the last class we did, we had a scale out front. And before you were allowed inside, you had to record your weight because it went into the calculator to tell you how much force you were putting out based on your body weight and how fast you were moving. Being able to evaluate, like a lot of people evaluate hose and nozzle packages now with a flow meter and various amounts of kinking. And I think that I probably have come up with a way to measure nozzle whip with two gyroscope accelerometers, which you can buy on Amazon for 40, $50 a piece. They link to a Bluetooth app. They're really fun to play around with. I think I figured that one out. I haven't quite gotten there yet, but on the tools, being able to plug and play, you weigh this much, the tool is this much, you're moving this fast. Okay, now move your hand positioning and see how much you lose in real time is going to be, I think, a game changer. We're at Firemanship in Illinois this July doing an 8-hour workshop, 2 days of that, where it's just the physics and tool portion of that. And it's going to be really cool to see where that goes. I don't really think outside of some of the stuff that's been done with hose and nozzle studies, we've never had that available for hand tools. We're finally going to be able to settle a lot of arguments. Some of them we already have been able to settle, like the 8-pound versus 6-pound. The 8-pound is still the happy medium. Guys were right about that. You've got a loss in power curve a little bit lower with the 6-pound, but you're putting out a far more force with the 8 because we're swinging them about the same speed. Now there's a lot more data to collect, and we're refining how we're collecting that. It's going to be a long road, couple more years, but it's really cool to see where that's going.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the difference in strength, technique, and tool, what are the ratios there, how much each one really matters.
No, and we will be able to see that.
Talk to me about physically and mentally making your way through the job. How has that impacted you?
I'm on my third major back injury. My knees feel like they have sand in them. It's not exactly where I thought I would be at 34 years old. But mentally, I think I'm so much better off for having gotten on the job. People can talk about till they're blue in the face about how much this job harms us. I think we miss how much this job helps us. I was a fairly anxious, scared kid. I was afraid of heights, afraid of tight spaces, socially awkward, still am. But I don't remember where exactly the point was, but I remember looking back and going, wow, I'm not the same person anymore, like a couple years on. The job has taken a lot from me and hurt me, but has given me so much more. I think we miss that a lot of times. We talk a lot, and I'm not trying, when I'm bringing this up, I'm not trying to diminish anything that's been said by, especially like your previous guests. I listened to Stephanie White's the other day. We talk a lot about firefighter suicide, and it's an epidemic that firefighters are killing themselves in such high numbers compared to the general population. And I remember sitting through a lecture from somebody that I otherwise really respect saying, we're doing this to ourselves and each other. No, we're not. Our suicide rate, these numbers are a couple years old, but they're about the same. I looked them up the other day, is 18 per 100,000. And that seems really, really high because the general population is 13 per 100,000, roughly. These are rounded numbers, but we're also 93% male. We're 50, 60% white, at least the US service. If you account for the demographics, like just very simply, just the gender disparity, that's it. Our suicide rate should be 27 per 100,000. It's 9 per 100,000 lower than it should be. So we're doing something right. And if you look at it, we have every protective factor, with the exception of religion, in the CDC's protective factors against suicide. We have a stable schedule. We have institution. We have shared work, shared sense of purpose. The times, and I'm still technically, I guess, in EAP through work for PTSD. Most of that happened off the job, not on the job. We can talk about that if you want to, but I am in treatment for PTSD, but I only learned how to deal with the emotional hardship on the job. We gain so much more for being here than we lose. And it's kind of disparaging to hear talked about like it's killing us. It's the times that I've been lowest is when I felt most isolated on the job. I've been on a shitty crew. You know, I had an officer at one point that was taking things like that I had told him in confidence and turned it over to management. Like those are the times that you feel the lowest. Other industries should be coming to us though and asking us, what are you doing that is making such a difference? It shouldn't be the other way around. We should find out what we're doing right and do more of it instead of looking at just at the negatives, because looking just at the negatives to any problem gives you a skewed sense of the problem and takes away from your ability to see a solution to it.
No, I definitely align more with the balanced perspective as you do. That I know the job has offered some traumatic situations, but then processing and working through them and with support system coming out the other side stronger, the post-traumatic growth end of things.
The growth and the residue, take something from mission critical teams.
Definitely something there.
And the other thing is how we talk about mental health really did me a disservice, I think. So we all see things that are awful. Objectively, we see some fucked up things, right? And it happens a lot. Coming off of some of those calls, and especially you get the little shift training or whatever, like, hey, these are the warning signs for PTSD. If you start having these, you have a problem. You need to talk to somebody. You're not a bigger man for forcing this down. You need to seek help because you've got a problem. So when I, have a bad call involving a child or something, early on in my career, I'm going, oh, I haven't been able to sleep for a week or two. I'm a little on edge. Like I'm hyper vigilant. Oh shit, I've got PTSD. No, you don't. That is how your body processes this. And I had no idea that this is how you process these problems. But like, this is your body's natural way of doing this. Nobody had ever told me, oh yeah, no, you probably, you watch someone burn to death. Like you're going to be a little bit on edge. Like your physiology works this way for a reason. This is how you process it. It will likely get better. If it doesn't, give somebody a call. That was all that somebody had to tell me. It's like nurses get alarm fatigue, where everything's always going off. So they just tone out when it's like, oh no, that patient's heart rate monitor's been 0 and alarming for the last half hour. You start to tune that out. And when it got really bad, I didn't realize it because, oh, well, these are the symptoms of PTSD and I've apparently already had it. No, I had never experienced it before where like it's the actual, because it, by dying like what are we on DSM-5 or whatever, it's over a month of those symptoms. And when I did hit that point, I had no idea because of how awful our education on the subject was. It allowed me to just kind of tune out the warning signs of it. Now I was really grateful for my current captain, who a couple of years ago was also, when I first got on the job, he was my captain on the rescue. I went to him because I was like, I feel like I'm drowning every moment that I'm awake. I can't sleep. I'm not dealing with this well. I need something. Like he had some understanding with that. He got me in touch with a therapist who used to be a fire medic, ended up as a cop, and now is doing EMDR therapy, which was really helpful, which even if you're not having problems, I'm a firm believer, like you will have the best sleep of your life after that shit. Rapid eye movement simulation. Like that's
fantastic.
That stuff is incredible. It's incredible how to watch Memories that I used to not be able to think about are just kind of blurry afterthoughts now. It's weird to think through. I'm trying to think, there was a book I read not too long ago on how like we look at trauma. I can't remember I wish I could remember the name of it, but how like 70-80% of people who go through really, really awful things come out just fine because the body actually does process this fairly well. And even the people that don't, it's a couple percentage points that end up with long-term issues. And that's exactly what we see in the field. The surveys that they use to say, are we having PTSD or not? They're asking, do you have these symptoms? Not, yeah, sometimes I can't sleep very well. I also have a dog that itches herself in the middle of the night. Sometimes I wake up for that. That in concert with sometimes, yeah, I have intrusive thoughts about stuff on the job because, hey, yeah, no, that we're passing by where we pulled somebody out and they died. Okay, yeah, I remember that when I drive by it at work. The combination of those two should not say that I have PTSD, but that's the way our surveys are written.
So it's a lot more personal, you think? A lot more has to be taken into account to figure it out for you.
I think so. And I think we're better at it than we think we are. In some parts, we're awful. We really are. But I think we would do a lot better job if we looked at the parts that we're doing right and we do more of it rather than a radical restructuring of our organization, which may or may not help in the long term.
Just like examining anything, like when you're talking about training, right? What are we doing right and what are we not doing right?
Oh yeah, if we're professionals and the job matters, right? And I think the job does matter. We tend to make a difference in people's lives. Well, then it's worth doing well. And if we're not measuring it, we're not able to improve. It works for us as only ever valid in comparison to all other options. Yeah, whether it's our method for flowing and moving or if it's our method for mental health, we need to be able to take an honest evaluation of how well this is working. Just starting initiatives isn't necessarily helping us. Talking ad nauseum about it does not necessarily help us. One of my favorite examples, I don't know, does Canada have the DARE program in schools?
Yep.
Okay.
Similar.
So the American one has since closed its doors or reorganized, but I used to do a lecture about like things that we think we understand, but we don't. And one of them is, just as an example, I use the DARE program because it's a really good example. No matter what your political or cultural beliefs are, 12-year-olds probably shouldn't be doing smack, right? So they spend over the lifetime of the program $750 million into the DARE program. And at best, it didn't stop anyone from doing drugs, like study after study. At worst, it actually encouraged drug use because they told everybody that the cool kids all around you are doing drugs 24/7. They're going to try to give you drugs. Well, if everyone else is doing it, fuck it. I might as well do it, right? So they spend $750 million to either do nothing or make kids do drugs. I would hazard a guess that our approach to mental health is probably doing the same thing. If we're telling it people, this is happening to everyone, they're not talking about it, but everybody's doing this. I think we're probably going to have similar outcomes where we may be counterproductive. And this is not my expertise. It's just something that I've been through. And I tend to be an opinionated person. But I think we could do a lot better job than what we are currently doing.
Johan Hari's video and talk on everything we know about addiction is wrong was a real eye-opener for me in that regard.
Yes. I've heard an interview or two with him. I can't say I've seen that video, but yeah.
That it's about disconnection. It's not about the drug being addictive.
Yeah. Well, and all the studies of soldiers coming back from Vietnam said that. They had like 60% drug use, 70% drug use in country. They come back, less than 10% ever do them again, much less become addicted. It's probably something similar. We have support structures built into the job. I come in, I have an institution that I agree with its fundamental purpose. I have a place that I need to be every third day and luckily work with some really incredible people. Like that is a protective factor in and of itself. And if you're feeling alienated at the firehouse, we need to fix that problem more than we need to fix any other.
It's not common you hear both perspectives integrated like you've described. Usually you hear the job's hard, the job is what it is. We just need to do what we're doing. It's fine. Or no, the job's a mess. It's going to hurt you. Therapy, therapy, therapy. So it's usually these extremes. Whereas you're saying there's benefits to both perspectives and it's not as extreme as it's made to seem.
Yeah, I'd 100% agree with that.
Physically, when we met down in Pensacola, you were telling me about the fall you had and how
Oh,
that
yeah.
changed things for you in a number of ways. So walk me through that.
Yeah, 2017. It was actually the anniversary just came up. I was still working in Virginia County on the West Virginia line, and we hit out early morning house fire. There are two of us to a station, some respond from home volunteers, and like 10, 15 minutes before the next station gets in. I don't have the third 911 call recorded. I have the first two, which are like, wow, this house is on fire up on Carper's Pike. And then the third one, I've heard it. I couldn't get a recording because it went to the sheriff's office because it's a guy saying, there's a house on fire and this dude in a ski mask and tube socks is trying to carjack me. And when he says it's ski mask and tube socks, that's all he's wearing. This guy is standing in the middle of the road, jerking off, trying to carjack people. Turns out he was doing that the entire night, like from the wood line while we're fighting this fire.
Few jackings
Um,
going on.
oh yeah. Multiple, yeah. I see what you did there. Um,
Yeah.
no, it turned out this kid, he was a former volunteer at that station. He was a legit pyrophiliac. He ended up going away for a while. He had set a fire in the basement in the Alpha Bravo quadrant on a mattress. I was riding the seat, crew of two, guy I'd known for years was driving. I do the 360 and nobody else was going to get a primary done very quickly. We would split. Usually, driver would take the nozzle, officer would search. In this case, we had a couple volunteers that had gotten there quickly, so they were going to take the line in with me. But I would pop doors on my way around on the 360. It was a for sale house, but it looked like somebody was squatting in the basement. Later determined it was the guy who set the place on fire, had been hanging out in there from time to time. There was a volunteer who had driven by and he said, no, this place is vacant. There's a for sale sign. So I get around to the front, volunteer chief from another department. Some guys had showed up and I was like, it looks like somebody's living in the basement. We need to knock out a quick primary. Somebody else grab the line. They were supposed to be right behind me. I make it down the hallway. Last thing I remember turning into a room and my heel catching on something. I believe it was a hole burned through the decking of the floor. It had burned all the floor joists against the alpha side wall. And it was funny. I had just gotten back from Portland firemanship, and DIY engine is one of my favorite classes, Gary Lane's class there. And I've taken it a bunch of times. I've helped out with it a bunch of times. And we had an almost identical layout of the burn cans to this house. And I had just run evolution after evolution after evolution a week before. I get into this place, I'm noticing things about fire that I've never seen before because like I'm calm, my heart rate is low, I'm in the zone, and like, oh, well, I'm noticing from the inside that the wind blowing outside is helping us with keeping like it vented over, it's staying on the Bravo side. I was in a really good frame of mind until all of the floor joists had burned down on that side. So just a catastrophic cantilever failure of the floor. I don't know how long I was out because nobody else saw me go down and nobody noticed when I got back up because I remember seeing some flames and my pass wasn't going off, but I don't know if I was moving or not. I woke up in the basement on the remains of the burned mattress. So I was like 30 seconds from like landing on a burning mattress. Instead, I just landed on part of a burned mattress. Not that it mattered because I landed on my cylinder and was knocked unconscious too. I remember thinking, you can't lie here forever. You need to move. I was like, okay, I need to move. Huh. Okay. Where do I move to? And I was like 8 feet from a door that I had actually opened. I ended up going for the Charlie door instead of the Bravo door because I had gone in that like 10 feet. I think I had viewed that as a door that you go in and out of, not just when you look in. Because my bell was really rung. Like I had been knocked out cold. And then I remember thinking, well, somebody needs to know there's a hole in the floor. Volunteer chief was on scene, so I called engine 14 to command priority traffic. Wasn't even a mayday initially. Go ahead. It's like there's a hole, AB quadrant. Just advise all units that floor is weakened. And I was like, I looked up at it and I was like, shit, I made that hole. That's why I'm here. And that's when it finally dawned on me that like I had gone through the floor and woke up and it was Mayday, 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 engine 14, which got walked over. That chief was giving instructions to a tanker that was not on scene yet. I ended up crawling out. I got out and I didn't realize I was hurt until the next morning. I was standing in the shower 2 hours after the hot water had given out because I couldn't lift my leg up over the side of the tub. Didn't find out for a couple months until I bruised my spinal cord at Art of Firemanship that I think May or June. And I went in for an x-ray and they were like, you have a partially healed fracture, your L1. I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And they're like, you didn't know that, did you? I'm like, nope. Well, you also have a bruised spinal cord, so you're going to be taking some months off. They wouldn't give me physical therapy for it. So for a long time, I was afraid to lift because it hurt all the time. And I knew eventually it was going to. Eventually, I went through a Tennessee smoke diver program the first time. 45 minutes in on the evac walk, like 120 pounds of gear and tools. My back said no more. I blew a disc out. And that was when I finally got physical therapy for it. But I was very apprehensive because I knew that at some point my career was going to be over based on like, yeah, you're fairly young, but like you're rough at this point. I had some other on-duty injuries, my wrists, my knees, kind of stuff. And luckily I was able to get some physical therapy for it. And I ended up finishing smoke diver the second time I went through. And it took me a long time to build back up the confidence to start lifting. And now I feel so much better because all those like accessory muscle groups are finally strong enough to deal with it. I'm sure at some point I'll pick something up relatively light and it'll, like, oh, that's it. Yep, we're done. It took a long time to come back from that injury there. Yeah.
You mentioned to me how your Mayday survival training let you down in that fire.
Oh yeah. Yeah. In that one, it definitely did, but there was another fire that had happened a year or two before. It was a respond from home volley, and I'd gone through. I was extinguishing in an attic. The attic truss that I was on broke, and I got wrapped up and like just hanging like a marionette in a bunch of like Romex and duct wire. I went to get my cutters out, and I remember distinctly telling myself, "This is where you call your Mayday," because in academy, the class before us, somebody had called a Mayday over the dispatch channel instead of the talk around channel that they were supposed to be on. And so they were like, no more using radios. They would put you in the entanglement prop. And I remember Zippy Weber from, he was at I think Engine 11 at the time in Loudon. He would lean down and go, this is where you call your Mayday. Now cut yourself out. And I remember telling myself, like, this is where you call your Mayday. Now cut yourself out. And I started cutting myself out. Never called the Mayday because we programmed that into me. And then when it shifted again and my cutters went flying, and I never did find them. They're somewhere in that attic, probably still, that townhouse. I reached down to try to get my radio because like, oh shit, I never called that. I just thought about it. I couldn't reach it. Luckily, somebody walked by and saw my feet and like legs dangling out of the ceiling. And, like I was never in any danger, but like shit, we trained our people to tell themselves this is where you call your Mayday and then start operating without ever telling anyone. If you want someone to do something under stress, you actually have to have them do it. And the one where I went through the floor, I had so much more time calling, hey, priority traffic, hole in the floor, everybody just watch out, than I ever did calling Maydays. Also, I think in a lot of ways, the like, hey, man, that door's out of play. That window's out of play. No, you can't drag him out. You can't get out that way. That door's out of play. I think that probably influenced me really negatively too, that I was literally 8 feet away from a way out. And I instead went like 35 or 40 feet through a basement that I did not know where I was going because that seemed like the in-play door because I'd been in and out of that already. Just our training in so many ways is not structured the way that people learn or the way people operate under stress. And it's amazing to me that like recognition prime decision making was developed watching fire chiefs, and the Marine Corps uses it, and operating rooms use it, sports teams use it, businesses use it, fire service, no. No, we're going to do like, what are there, 5 different models in instructor 1 and none of them are psychomotor? Like, you got to be shitting me. This is absurd.
You use an analogy that training is a map drawn at a scale, bending the map.
I've been thinking about this for the last few months, and hopefully this is not just me kind of rambling, but I think I'm halfway onto something with it. We're drawing a map when we train people to a location that generally those people have not been before. We forget that maps are not the territory that they're showing. They are a representation of it. There's a painting from the early 1900s, late 1800s by a guy named Magritte. It's called the treachery of images. If you ever look it up, it's a tobacco pipe on a white field. And underneath is written in French, and I can't do the original French because I don't speak French. It says, "This is not a pipe." Because he's right. It's not a pipe. It's a representation of a pipe. It can tell you what one side, the color, sort of. You can maybe discern texture. You can't discern scale. You can't tell what's on the other side. You can't, none of that. It is only what is represented on that one side. And it's not an accurate representation. And in a lot of the same ways, we're drawing maps for people, and we forget that these are representations, not the real thing. And what we choose to include, so a one-to-one scale map, I could draw my yard one-to-one scale. It gives me nothing over just being in the place, but it doesn't allow me to emphasize anything. Nothing stands out. So if we try to create total realism in a training environment, it often is not all that helpful because you're not actually emphasizing anything to the student. In the same way, we have to pay attention to what map we're drawing. I could probably get close to my nearest town, to my house, off of the water main map, but I'll get close. I won't get there because the water treatment plant, where all the pipes go, is half a mile away from town. I'll get close, but I'm not going to get there because they're meant to do separate things. Power line map, same idea. I will eventually probably be able to guess where I'm going, but it'll take me some weird ways and probably over some like ravines and stuff. When we draw training, we put that together. We have to actually think about what are the operative parts of the situation we're going to be in. What changes the reaction in your response? If I'm doing training on, say, finding a victim and dragging them out, what are the things that are going to change how I deal with that situation? Well, size of victim, probably. Things that are going to change, that are going to negatively impact me. Naked victims that are sweaty, sloughing skin, leaking plasma. Floor coverings. Is this linoleum that's been heated a lot and is now tacky? Is it carpet that was partially burned away? Is it tile that's slippery? Are there obstacles? So if I'm going to design training, I need to think about those things. But what do? We put them in giant open rooms, concrete, brushed surfaces, and we use Rescue Randy, who doesn't bend very well, doesn't really have operative joints. He can bend in all sorts of ways that a human body can't, but some ways you can't bend at all. All our victims are the same weight, and we do it in rooms without furniture. So we're drawing them an inaccurate map to a place they've never been and expecting them to be able to operate off of it. In the same way, search training or even hose line management. I love nozzle forward. I will continue saying all the greatest things about nozzle forward. People don't tend to take away some of the subtle parts of it, though. Aaron will tell you, hey, if it's cluttered conditions, we're probably going to end up in something closer to a knee walk or a New York shuffle than we are the clamp slide, right? Because you don't have the room for it. People who've never been through the program, that's one of their critiques of it is, well, this is a parking lot thing or an open hallway thing. I don't have the room in my X city, right? Well, they've never been through the program, so they're not there to hear it. But a lot of training centers that the program goes on at do not necessarily have the ability to give you closed-in areas, a lot of clutter. So you end up doing everything in clamp slide. And we'll see guys, or tripoding for search, they'll try to tripod in my average bedroom. So I'm a driver on a rescue. My job is searching alone. My average bedroom's 8x9. Okay. Now you throw a twin XL or a queen bed in there and 2 dressers and a Barbie Jeep and 4,000 books. Am I tripoding in there? No. I'm probably reaching, hitting one wall, reaching, hitting another wall, making sure I don't have a closet and sprawling out on the bed, and I'm out. But where do we learn to search? Big, open, concrete rooms with, at most, the bare minimum of furniture that does not feel like furniture. Even just finding a victim, we train them, like Tennessee, when I went through TFAC of the State Academy, they're having a search for spanner wrenches and smoke diver. And at one point, golf balls. Okay. But I'm going through with a bunch of people who don't know what a human being feels like in fire gloves. My friend TJ at work, his first fire with the city, he catches a grab. He didn't initially know he was touching a person. So he doesn't know what a person feels like in fire gloves. Over and over, I hear this from people. We had a dead guy. He was like a human pork rind on a fire last winter. where it was like the third engine to like really heavy hoarder conditions, like pass by this guy to realize that he's not just a couch cushion. In his case, I think pretty sure I knelt on him. But why don't we know what people feel like? Well, because Rescue Randy was easier. So for like Dixie Firemanship's classes, I just got yesterday, I was down in Columbia. We were teaching inside truck for Soda City. We use live victims in neoprene wetsuit covered in, well, in this case, it was veterinary lube because Walmart doesn't sell their personal lube anymore in 32-ounce bottles. We can buy it by the gallon for horses, though. But it soaks into the neoprene and never dries. It stays slick, and there's nothing to grab. We teach firefighters how to move victims. Oh, hey, just strip off your turnout coat and your SCBA, but you go lay down and play victim. What do? They grab their pants every time. They grab their bunker pants. And it's great. It's a huge handle. Okay. Last guy we hauled out was wearing the flimsiest of boxer shorts that did not make it really to the front door and a wife beater that was torn off of him in the front yard. You are not dragging that guy by oversized boxer shorts and a wife beater. But we pretend this fantasy in training that, oh, no, they'll learn how to do it. Watch them. They'll go to pick up their legs, the victim's legs, and they will grab pants every time. And it doesn't matter. I can wear coveralls. They'll grab for clothing every time, even if you tell them not to. We stop putting up with that shit. We use something that you literally cannot grab with your hands. You have to lock out long bones to drag them. For forcible entry, the number one negative event that is going to change how you force doing gap set force is a jam blowout. Wooden jam or even a light metal jam, crushing down or separating. Okay, what can almost none of our props do? I had a roommate when I lived in that volley house in Tennessee. I had a door prop there. We'd force doors all the time. And he and I would tell him, because I use a algorithmic approach. If this, or like plan A, just hit the door really hard. It's probably going to open. If it doesn't, you've loosened it up a little bit. It fails into plan B, adds work, plan C, forks work. If the jam fails or whatever. We go through A, B. Okay, the jam failed, go to C. Okay, if the jam fails, go to C. And we do this over and over and over. He gets on a medical lockout at work, throws his ads in, crushes down, jam blowout. Puts his ads in, crushes down. There's nothing to crush against. Puts his ads in, crushes down, puts his ads in, crushes down, puts his ads in, crushes down. He's stuck in a feedback loop because every time he'd ever done that, it succeeded. He has an expectation of success. You're not overruling that with any kind of intellectual, hey, if this happens, you need to change to do this, because it's never happened to him. We rebuilt how we train and how we build the props because of that one incident, but nobody else's props do it. I'm not trying to toot our horn on that. Like, it's a gigantic deficiency. We see a massive over application of ads work no matter where we go, because everybody knows that if you throw your ads in on the jam and you lean your entire body weight at the lock into this, well, the door's going to open eventually, or you'll destroy the tool. And then it's the tool's fault. It's not me. That, like, no real door is going to react this way. We're drawing this map. It's not to scale. It's not a map that gets us where we want to go. It might get us close, but it's not. It's just really frustrating. Example I like is, so U.S. invades Grenada in 1983, right? The Army intelligence and whatever doesn't know where Grenada is, because where the hell, I couldn't point it out on a map, right? They don't have any maps of it. They end up going to a travel agency, getting tourist maps that have like the theme park, or it wasn't theme park, but like the ministry cultures over here and the museums over there, and here's the nice beach. And they draw grid squares over it. People died because they're like using these to shoot artillery and like figure out where they're going. Could you get kind of close? Sure. But it's not a map we want to use. In the same way, like, GPS has changed a lot of this, but you take the old ADC map of the whole North America or whatever. It's got all the interstates and whatever the Canadian equivalent of the interstate is. I don't know off the top of my head. And you get stuck in a traffic jam or the road's shut down. Well, where are the back roads? Well, we didn't include them. We're not including the back roads for something like your fire tack has failed and now you have to flow and move backwards or you are going to get burned. We don't have the plan B drawn onto that map.
So really the biggest hurdle is falling under OSHA for non-emergency incidences. And the book doesn't apply when you're on an emergency.
In some ways, there's still quite a bit of leeway under OSHA. I had a reasonable belief that the building was occupied as far as searching, but
As far as needing to provide a safe working,
for
a safe
training,
workplace, right? For training, you have
Um,
to take these
I
into consideration, right?
it's a safer workplace if we made our training included more danger in our training,
By
which
all means.
we don't understand the difference between risk and danger anyways. So why would we understand it there? Danger is the presence of something that can cause harm. Risk is the likelihood that it will happen. We don't understand that difference at all.
People don't take well to hurting yourself for a situation you might not be put in.
Yeah, but it guarantees that someone will be hurt on the other
Yes,
side.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So expanding off of that, what would you like to see or hear conveyed to firefighters more often if we can't make these structural or administrative or legal changes? What should we be conveying out of the gate
Well,
to
so
people so that they can get the most from what they're doing?
some of it I don't think takes any real structural change. I think it takes a mindset change in how we design training because we don't really have a doctrine as far as the fire service in how we write training, how we design scenarios. I think a more purposeful approach might be a really good start there. What are you attempting to replicate? What are the things that will change how they need to operate? How do you illuminate those within the evolution? How do you replicate the things that will negatively or positively impact them? So in our case, we're going to put the live victim that actually reacts how a person reacts to being manhandled, who has joints, in something that replicates burned skin, where you cannot just grab a wrist and go, okay, let's do that with a 250-pound person on a slick surface. It's not happening. That's not a grab and go. You are going to have to lock out a long bone. And so something like that, it's being able to set up a separate search area, even if you're not burning in them, fine. I'm good with theatrical smoke. I'm good with Class B burn buildings. Actually, I really like Class B burn buildings. There's some massive advantages of them because a concrete box that I burn pallets in does not show me fire behavior, especially it's been heated all day. Okay, I'm not getting layered smoke. I'm getting steam. The ability to actually be able to work a fire back into a room. So Mississippi State Fire Academy, where I work part-time, their Class B buildings are great because I can show them, okay, you've got a fire that's licking out of this room. It's coming across the ceiling out of this doorway. I need you to control this hallway. We can get close with theatrical smoke on that, and I can show you at least that it's moving. And now work the doorway, work your way in, and I'm not going to cut this fire off until you actually work the room versus, hey man, stop. No. Just like a second or two. You got it knocked. I got to reset this fire. If you keep flowing, I'm never going to get it relit, right? Guy I used to know, he had a rookie. Now, this story was secondhand, told him to me, but I assume it was true. They go in fighting a basement fire, really, really hot. He gets them finally into position. Okay, flow into this door, get the fire. I'm going to search this room here. Comes back and fire's blowing out this door. And the kid's going, I've got it knocked. The fuck? Like, no, flow water. And they get out and he's like, yeah, I had it knocked. You flow a couple seconds, you get it to knock back a little bit and you shut down. We're teaching people to do that. I can't blame anybody who does. There's no common sense in what we do under stress. One of the other things that we've been doing, we haven't completely proven the theory that we're working under, but we've gotten some really good validating data. We think we've found a way to at least mimic, if not induce, hormonal tachycardia. So the stress reaction that gives that imprinted physiological and mental reaction to a stressful situation, right? Same thing that puts you on edge after a call is also the thing that helps give importance to your previous experiences, the things that deeply ingrain responses into you, because we don't fall back on the level where you're training. You fall back on the first thing you did under stress, which unfortunately for most of us, we add that stress way too early in the form of wannabe drill instructors. And so people get an ingrained response that's essentially panic. What we've been doing, our forcible entry physics class, the last day, so they've got a couple hundred reps They're feeling good. Nothing's been under stress so far. We put them on an assault bike. We get their heart rate up to about 160, and we use low frequency, high beats per minute sound waves, because vibration, under the presence of heavy vibration, your heart rate doesn't fall back down. So you can override that through like physical training and previous experience. But for most people, they've never gotten to that point. They will sit between 140 and 160 beats per minute. They will have a stress reaction at the door, but they've had enough previous experience with an expectation of success in the last 2 days that they have now had that stress reaction while doing it right. And we're attempting to imprint a reaction for the next time they see it in the field under stress. And I think we finally worked it out to the point where our data off the heart rate trackers is, because we monitor them throughout the evolution and then after. It's really cool what you can do with like the really budget shit on Amazon. From that data, we think we've found a way to accurately mimic hormonal tachycardia like that. And so that's not a structural change to how we train, really. And it doesn't take a whole lot more than what we already, okay, I bought $200 of speakers off a drummer that was moving to get 1,000 watts of stage amplifiers. And granted, you can't do it for every type of training because it only works in about a 4x4 box. I can't follow you around with people holding giant speakers. Maybe someday we'll figure out a wearable device. And granted, also just as a note of caution to anybody listening to this, if you do that wrong and you do it at the wrong time, you will train someone to panic. You are going to induce a stress event in less than ideal circumstances. But a lot of what we're doing doesn't cost a whole lot. We're far more accurately mimicking reality and then also doing a better job preparing the students for what they're going to see in the field. Another thing that we've been doing, we bought a bunch of refurbished factory refurb iPads from like 2016. They're $100 a piece. But every rig at work for us already has an iPad because we use them for the MDT. Well, the camera function on that is a built-in slow-mo camera. I can scrub through. I can show. So every one of our evolutions when we teach forcible entry is recorded because I don't want to have to pantomime out what the student was doing. I just take them back and say, hey, this is what we were doing. Now watch this guy do it. Okay, now look back at what you were doing. We can save them if we want to. We can delete them if we want to. They also run our heart rate trackers. They run the accelerometers for the physics lab. You can do all this shit on a budget. It doesn't take that much to make our training far better. Every, I think, emergency management authority in the country probably has, for some reason, it's always an igloo cooler full of wetsuits that have holes in them. I don't know why that's the case, but it has been in the course of traveling, which is how we found it initially, like came up with the idea. It was like, oh, how could we do a better job of replicating it? Well, what about a wetsuit? Because that's fairly form-fitting. Like it probably it soaks in water. That's how a wetsuit works. It probably soak in water-based lube. And we came up with that idea the day before we did it, when we had all gotten into town for a class. It really doesn't take much. And luckily, I think training is going in a far better direction than it was, but we still do have departments teaching searching for spanner wrenches. Well, I don't need to search for spanner wrenches because I got to pull people out. That change doesn't take a whole lot.
Thank God for tinkerers.
Yeah. Screw that guy.
Screw that guy. How can people get a hold of you if they want to reach out?
I'm semi on Facebook. I have an Instagram that I think has like 10 pictures on it. Tradesman Fire has a Facebook and an Instagram. Andrew at tradesmanfire.com. Dixie Firemanship's Facebook page. Got a couple ways to reach me. I'm usually pretty receptive to people reaching out. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't want to talk shop with people.
I think a lot of us talk about the benefits of going to conferences and getting outside the four walls of your department. And this is another great example of that. Like, I think you mentioned in the email, like, I think it was when we were doing one of the classes and you're like, how cool is it? You just have a random lunch with somebody. And
yeah. What was her name? Rachel Delacour. Worked for San Diego, randomly invited us both to lunch. Like,
the three
where
of
the
us.
hell else am I going to sit there and talk flow restrictions in Hens products for an hour or something?
Yeah.
Without knowing who each other were. Like that was a cool experience. I think we were both much better for it. And
much better for it.
I love fire conferences because you just have those meetings over and over and over. Like the networking is the best part of all of them.
Yeah. And sometimes, just random that way. And we all focus on what classes we're going to take. And those do have huge value, but there's so much more value on top of that in just meeting people and talking shop.
Yeah. I can't remember where we were. Michael Taylor and I were walking down the street and at some conference, and it's like, I'm really looking forward to Laguerre's class tomorrow. I'm like, well, I think he's standing on a milk crate over there talking to people. Like you could just go hear him. Like,
yeah, the chats before and after or at the restaurants are just, they're second to none.
There are few classes that I've learned more from than like some of the post bar, like or the socials at some of the conferences.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we got connected, man.
Yeah, no, this has been great. I really enjoyed this.
Awesome.
Hopefully my incoherent rants, somebody gets something from them.
No, it's golden. We'll do another one for sure.
Oh, cool. Hopefully I'll have something to talk about.